people believe they buy time with capital. But there are enough people who believe that to build certain brands, you need that time and they're willing to do it bootstrap. So I think capital is a resource, it's an allocation. So I do not think, at least my view is, you should not mix the business with being invested. That's a
So maybe my question came out wrong. What I meant to say is nobody starts to build a business thinking that I'm going to get an investor in 3 months, right?
Yeah.
They build a business, they need help along the way. What are the things that they can do to look more attractive whenever it's ready to be invested in?
I think a couple of things that we look for. Again, Adarsh, I'm going out of a limb here to say that there are certain needs of venture capital, and also the ecosystem of venture capital in India is still younger compared to the West, right? So the way we look at things may be a little jaded because we still are yet to mature in a lot of ways as an ecosystem. There are certain biases that creeps in, if I might say so myself, right? So if you look at the very typical way a venture capital evaluates, you'll have to see a potentially large market, which we all believe that it is there. But the most important thing we look for is the quality of the problem statement and the connect of the founding team with that. I have met a few founders in the eldercare space here, and the common thing across all of them is there is a huge founder market fit based on what they've done before and their ability to leverage their learning curve and experience in creating and reimagining a service. That's one. The second thing is, again, there are two types of companies that I at least demarcate, right? The ones which are, like if you take consumer tech, SaaS, it's very easy, and that's something that we've all built mental models to evaluate. But there are spaces like this, and there are spaces, in many other spaces, and suddenly I'm blanking out on that, where it may not fit the mold of the kind of capital allocation and the IRRs and the mental models that are required for these. Again, it depends, right? So first, it's important to understand the problem statement, the need of the problem statement, and the structural needs of the problem statement. If it means it takes 10 years to build a trusted bank, that's the time it takes. Then I think product has to be, the capital has to be productized according to that.
All right. I'm going to answer in a slightly different way. And I'm going to put some accountability on you as the head of this organization. So the first thing is that you guys are in an awesome space, right? Because when the outside world looks at this sector, it says, there's a lot of people. They have a lot of money. They need a bunch of stuff. Okay, so everybody will then say, we need a thesis. And so we'll get a few analysts to go out, and this is people who don't know about anything. Okay, and we'll mix stuff up, and we'll say, you know what, we can sell them this, and we can do this, we can connect the dots, and we can wire up their homes. And then as a consequence of that, after a while, the investors are leading the market and the investment thesis. That is really stupid. And the reason you let us be stupid is because you know more about this market than anybody else. You limit your ambition because you think capital is the be-all and end-all of this process. And you don't take the time and effort to educate us as investors as to what we should be looking for. And you don't define good and you don't define bad. That's your job, Adarsh. You have to tell us what good looks like. You have to tell us your aspiration for your elder. You have to tell us that you may not know how to get there and how we can help you. Not give me money. Because there are easier things to invest in than stuff that we don't know about, but this is exciting. This is actually about how you transform the new generation to give them opportunities, to give them a vision, to give them a space where you can actually make this country a leader in a field. But if you leave it to us, you're in a lot of trouble. So it's your job.
Very, very interesting insight. A quick follow-on question, right? Priya mentioned about patient capital, right? So where is this patient capital? I'm going to ask this to Salim. He knows where the patient capital is. So you said patient capital, right? You said, okay, you know what? This is a sector that needs patient capital. So I thought, let me ask Salim where this patient capital
Look, there is capital everywhere, right? I mean, today it's estimated there's $85 trillion of capital in Europe just waiting for an opportunity. And capital measures its time based on its risk reward. And it's a wonderful time to be alive in this world today. Honestly, I came out of semi-retirement because research tells us more about this space than anything else, so that capital actually now has certainty. Before we were just taking it was a crapshoot. Now capital is actually saying that not only can I invest, but there are people who will help me take my investment to the next stage, buy me out and go from there. So there are chains. And patient capital doesn't actually have to be one organization that's going to see you from point A all the way to point B. You put an idea in place and we'll figure it out. Prayer will say, look, I'll come in here, we'll get a who has lots of money, and we'll say, hey, would you be the back end? And then we will figure out all the steps in the middle. But come up with the products, guys. Honestly, I've been looking at this space in 4 years since I've been in India. It's the biggest opportunity that I think exists here, and I have nothing to invest in.
So some great takeaways, guys. I think focus on the product, focus on the solution you're providing.
And the ideas, even if you don't know how to implement them, at least stand up and articulate what you genuinely believe in. The world will figure it out for you, but at least articulate your vision.
Salim and Priya have covered most of the points, but I just had a few basic hygiene level requirements that I'll add. Given the population, again, we're talking about, this is a mature population. This is a population that is experienced. So they will not spend their hard-earned money on something which is frivolous or something which is very, very discretionary or which they just want to experiment. They want to. It's a population for which you need to earn their trust. Whether it's a product or a service that you're selling, it's difficult to earn that trust. But once you earn that trust, and because of their experience, they should stick around. So for us, one of the factors we like to assess is the retention of clients here. This is not an educational or a product which someone will try and just try, experiment and then move on. This population will adopt products and services that they trust, and once they trust, they will continue to use those. So retention is a big factor that we put a lot of emphasis on. And the second is, again, from the characteristic of this segment, given it's a vulnerable segment, for us it's very important the processes, controls that a company has in place to ensure that this segment is treated fairly and their vulnerabilities are not taken advantage of. So, are there enough controls to ensure there is no sort of negligence, there is no abuse of this population? Does the company that we invest in or we evaluate have all those controls in place? And those controls, as compared to any other venture, will have to be a notch higher in a senior care company because of the population we're dealing with. So that is extremely important from our perspective.
Right. Very interesting insights, retention and building controls. Priya, if you had to bet on one sector and maybe a company doesn't exist in that space right now, what would your bet be on?
The peripheral services which sit on top of these trust building sectors. For example, what Salim is building, I think, is a fundamental, the fact that it's a home, it's an anchor, it invites trust, is a very, very significant portion of the first half. But to me personally, I think that falls under health. It needs a lot of operational excellence. It needs a lot of healthcare. It needs a lot of reimagining health. So to me, as specialist people solve that, I think I'm very excited about reimagining homes for elders, which is, what is that, how can we reimagine the place of stay for an elder? And I believe the way to think about it is a 20-year view, and we've discussed this, which is today, we all believe in India especially, this need to own assets. I'm sure all of you appreciate this. My father-in-law still owns land in Kerala, and I've been trying to tell him there's no relevance to this. Let's get liquidity, we can can make that money work, they do not believe in that. So this sense of ownership with the older people, which then moves to people like us, where there's a limited amount of need of ownership, but we are okay with being liquid, and then our kids, who I think will want to be asset light. So how do you create, while, like Neha's point, start with the needs today, but also build that something graduates to the wants, right? And when I say home, it involves reimagining the space the person is living, the financial liquidity that the person is getting with that home. Today, as we know, that reverse mortgage in India is not very, very favorable for elders, right? And this particular 80-year-old single lady staying in a very large home, which does not have a watchman, not because she can't afford to, because she's price sensitive, she doesn't want anybody in her house, staying alone, how do you help her see and reimagine her home, which is non-intrusive?
A whole bunch of examples like that. When it comes to caring for the elderly, what are those global learnings that we can leapfrog and we don't have to make the same mistakes here?
I think there's one which is striking when you come from somewhere else, right? We have a value base, and I consider myself Indian, we have a value base in our people that is phenomenal. And we're born with the concept of care, humility, service. Trouble is that when we go and work in an organization, the people who run the organization forget that. Human capital in India seems to be dispensable. We seem to have 16 layers of hierarchy in organizations as part of that process. It's nuts. You're taking your most valuable resource and dumbing it down versus learning how to empower it. HR is lazy. It's non-existent. It's used for hiring and firing. And annual reviews are not about talent development, but about trying to mitigate cost of increases. Unless you change that attitude, you're basically taking India's greatest commodity, its greatest asset, and putting it in the trash. So the only learning that I would encourage is learn how to value and develop human capital, and not exploit it, but empower it. Because it will take you from here, it's already taken you to the moon, it's going to take you to places that you never imagined that you could go.
So, I think I'll go back to my point that this is a vulnerable population. It needs to be provided services and products with care that minimizes any risk of negligence, that minimizes any risk of abuse. I think as an industry, what we need to do, and which is still at least not evident in senior care, is establish those standards of service offerings, and I'm right now sort of focused more on service, given the bias. But we need to establish those standards of service offerings to this sector. And we've done it in other sectors. If you look at, say, the medical sector, you look at hospitals, you have NABH accreditations, you have for laboratories, you have NABL accreditations, you have similar standards for educational institutions. This segment, still, we don't have anything which is specific for this segment. And we need to ensure that that framework, those quality standards get established very specifically for senior care. In absence of that, one bad incident or a couple of bad incidents can really deter the momentum the sector is seeing.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, audience, for being patient with us. Thank you, Salim, Priya. Thank you, Neha. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I know a lot of you.
Session. I must say it's been an extremely informative, reflective session. Thank you so much.